My name is Avery Lane, and I was 35 years old the afternoon my ex-mother-in-law told a hallway full of nurses that my divorce had finally made her family whole. It happened outside the maternity wing of Mercy Grove Medical Center, 3 doors down from the nursery window where visitors pressed their hands to the glass and pointed at babies like they were looking at stars. I had just finished a 14-hour shift. My hair was still pinned under a surgical cap. There was blood on the cuff of my scrub pants from a little boy who had come in after a rollover crash, and I had not eaten anything except half a protein bar I found in my locker. That was when Margot Whitaker stepped in front of me. Margot had the kind of smile wealthy women learn when they want cruelty to look like concern. She was wearing pearls, a cream coat, and the same perfume she used to wear to church every Sunday when she introduced me as Ethan's wife, the nurse. Not Avery. Never Avery. Just Ethan's wife. She looked me up and down, then turned slightly, making sure the 2 nurses near the desk and the volunteer with the flower cart could hear her. Then she said, "Leaving you was the best decision my son ever made. Now he has a daughter with Sienna, a real family at last. A real family. 5 words. 7 years of marriage. 2 years of being called barren in rooms I was not in. 1 best friend who became my replacement. All of it folded into that one sentence, spoken under hospital lights while newborn lullabies played over the speakers. I did not cry. I did not step back. I pressed my thumb against the old silver watch on my wrist, the one my grandmother wore through 38 years of night shifts, and I looked at Margot Whitaker the same way I looked at a monitor when the numbers did not match the patient. Calm, careful, not fooled. "Is that what you believe?" I asked. Margot laughed once, not because it was funny, because she thought she had already won. "Oh, honey," she said, "everyone knows." That was the moment the elevator opened behind her. A man stepped out carrying a folder from county court. Not a doctor. Not a visitor. Not anyone Margot wanted to see. His name was Owen Whitaker, Ethan's younger brother. And when Sienna saw him through the maternity room window, all the color left her face. 5 minutes later, the name nobody wanted written on that baby's legal file was about to be spoken out loud. Welcome back to Broken Family Stories, where quiet women stop carrying loud lies, and the truth does not shout until it has a record. If you have ever been blamed for something someone else hid, stay with me. Because this is not a story about revenge. It is a story about what happens when a family builds an entire life on a lie, then forgets that paperwork has a longer memory than people. Let me go back before the hallway, before Owen, before the folder. I grew up in Mill Creek, Tennessee, in a trailer with blue shutters. My mother painted herself every spring because she said poverty did not have to look neglected. My father died when I was 11, crushed under a logging truck he had been repairing on the side of a road in January rain. My mother, Denise Lane, raised me and my younger brother by cleaning offices at night and sitting with elderly neighbors during the day. She taught me 3 things. Show up early. Do the work right. Never let anyone make you feel ashamed of honest hands. I became a nurse because of her, not because it was noble, because I understood bodies before I understood people. Bodies tell the truth. A fever does not pretend. A pulse does not gossip. Blood pressure does not smile at church and lie in the fellowship hall. By the time I was 30, I was a senior pediatric emergency nurse at Mercy Grove. I ran transport calls, trained new staff, handled parents who came in screaming because a normal morning had turned into the worst day of their lives. I was good under pressure. That became my reputation. Avery Lane does not panic. Avery Lane can start an IV in a moving ambulance. Avery Lane can talk a mother into breathing while her child is being intubated. Avery Lane will stay after shift if the department is drowning. I wore that reputation like armor. I did not know yet that armor can get heavy enough to trap you inside it. I met Ethan Whitaker at a hospital fundraiser. His mother was chair of the Mercy Grove Auxiliary, which meant she organized donor luncheons, controlled charity seating charts, and spoke about service while never once carrying a tray. Ethan was handsome in the polished way of men who have never wondered whether the rent will clear. Dark hair, good teeth, a voice that sounded sincere even when he was ordering coffee. His family owned Whitaker Home Supply, 3 hardware stores, and a lumber yard, and their name was on a plaque near the hospital chapel because Margot had donated a recovery room renovation and made sure everyone knew it. Ethan asked me to dance at that fundraiser. I said no because I was working the first aid station. He came back with 2 paper cups of lemonade and said, "Then I'll stand here and make sure you do not faint from dedication." I laughed. That was all it took. Not the lemonade. The noticing. When you spend most of your life being useful, being noticed feels dangerously close to being loved. We married 2 years later at First Grace Methodist in front of 200 people. Margot chose the flowers. Margot chose the hymns. Margot chose the reception menu because she said my mother's suggestion of barbecue would confuse the tone. My mother wore navy and smiled like she had decided not to fight battles that would not help me. Sienna Moss stood beside me as my maid of honor. Sienna had been my best friend since nursing school. She was the soft one, the pretty one, the one who cried at commercials and borrowed lipstick from my purse and called me her anchor. She held my bouquet while I said my vows. She cried harder than I did. When I look back at the photos now, I see something in her face I did not know how to read then. Not jealousy exactly. Hunger. But at the time, all I saw was my best friend loving me. That was my first mistake. My second was believing that people who benefit from your trust will protect it. Ethan and I started trying for a baby the year after we married. At first, it was sweet. A calendar on the fridge. Jokes about baby names. A tiny pair of yellow socks Sienna bought me because she said she had a feeling. Then 6 months became a year. A year became 18 months. Every negative test made the bathroom feel colder. Every pregnancy announcement at church landed like a polite punch. I did what medical people do. I made appointments. I had blood work, hormone panels, ultrasound, every uncomfortable test you can imagine, and a few you probably cannot. My results came back normal. Not perfect, because bodies are never perfect, but normal, capable. No medical reason I could not conceive. The doctor suggested Ethan complete the male factor workup. Simple, common, logical. Ethan laughed when I told him. Not a real laugh. A closed one. Avery, come on. It is standard. Whitaker men do not have that issue. I remember that sentence because of how rehearsed it sounded. Whitaker men do not have that issue. As if biology checked family pride before making decisions. I asked again 2 weeks later. He snapped. Maybe if you stopped treating this like a case file, we would actually have some faith. Faith. That word became a wall. Every time I brought up testing, Ethan put faith in front of the door. Margot put herself beside it. "You work too much," she told me after Sunday lunch one afternoon, spooning peach cobbler into bowls. A woman's body knows when it is not being made peaceful. I blinked. "I'm sorry?" She smiled. "Some women are made to hold babies. Avery. Some women are made to hold charts. That is not an insult. It is just the truth of how God builds us." Ethan said nothing. That should have told me everything. Instead, I told myself he was embarrassed. I told myself he would defend me later. I told myself silence did not mean agreement. Quiet women can make entire marriages out of excuses. The rumors started softly. Not enough to confront, just enough to bruise. At church, women placed hands on my shoulder and said they were praying for my womb. At the grocery store, someone from Margot's circle told me, "You are still a mother to all those patients, in a way." In a way, as if womanhood came with an asterisk beside my name. Sienna was the person I called when I could not breathe. She came over with wine and her soft voice and sat cross-legged on my couch while I folded laundry. "Margot is awful," she said. "She thinks I'm defective." "You are not defective. You are just built for different things." I looked at her. She reached across the couch and squeezed my hand. "I mean, look at you, E. You save children every day. Maybe that is your kind of motherhood." It sounded kind. It sounded loving. But kindness can still carry a knife if the hand knows where to place it. I did not notice that she had started stopping by when Ethan was home. I did not notice that he laughed more easily with her. I did not notice that she knew when his meetings ended, which games he watched, how he took his coffee. I was too busy trying to be gracious about my own erasure. The divorce papers came on a Friday. That felt intentional. Ethan knew Fridays were my longest shifts. He knew I would come home tired enough to accept anything just to sit down. There was a manila envelope on the kitchen counter, and Ethan's side of the closet was almost empty. He left a note. A note. After 7 years, Avery, I cannot keep living in a house with so much sadness. I want a family. I hope someday you understand. Ethan. No apology. No conversation. No courage. By Sunday, he was staying with Sienna. By Wednesday, half of Mill Creek knew. By Friday, everyone knew the version Margot wanted them to know. Poor Ethan. He tried so hard. A man wants children. Avery was always more married to the hospital anyway. Some women are made to hold charts. The phrase traveled fast because it sounded almost poetic, and people like cruelty better when it has rhythm. Sienna never corrected it. That was the part that broke something in me more completely than Ethan leaving. My best friend knew my test results were normal. She had driven me to one of the appointments. She had sat in my car while I cried afterward from relief and exhaustion. She knew, and still, when Margot's story moved through town like smoke, Sienna opened the windows and let it in. I did nothing. I wish I could tell you I fought. I wish I could tell you I posted the truth, marched into church, dumped my medical records on Margot's potluck table. I did not. I went to work. I cut my hair to my shoulders because I could not stand seeing it in wedding photos. I sold the house because I could not sleep in rooms where my life had been taken apart. I rented a small apartment 6 blocks from the hospital. I kept my mother from driving over to Margot's house with a cast iron skillet, which, in hindsight, might have been less emotionally expensive. I stayed quiet because I thought dignity meant not defending myself against people determined to misunderstand me. That was the lesson I had to unlearn. Dignity is not silence when silence is being used as evidence. A year after the divorce, Mercy Grove opened a new position, Director of Pediatric Emergency Transport. It was my job in every way except the nameplate. I had written the new protocols. I had trained half the transport team. I had built the response system the hospital now bragged about in donor newsletters. My supervisor, Theo Alvarez, told me to apply. "You have been doing the job without the title for 2 years," he said. I applied. The first interview went well. The second went better. Then the whispers arrived before the committee vote. Not through nursing. Nursing knew me. The whispers came through the board. Mercy Grove had 3 community representatives on the final approval panel, and one of them was Margot Whitaker's closest friend, a woman named Linda Pierce, who believed gossip became wisdom if spoken in a concerned tone. Questions started coming back to Theo. Was I emotionally stable enough for department leadership? Would my recent divorce affect judgment under pressure? Was there ongoing personal conflict with a major donor family that might create reputational risk? Reputational risk? I had pulled children out of wrecked cars in January rain, but apparently a rumor about my empty uterus made me risky. The job went to a man named Greg Harlan from 2 counties over. Nice enough. Qualified enough. But he had not built what I built. When the announcement email came, I was in the break room eating soup from a paper cup. I read it 3 times. Then I walked into the supply closet, closed the door, and sat on an overturned box of saline bags. For the first time, I understood that the lie was not just a stain on my past. It was reaching forward. It had hands. It was taking things from me that Ethan had no right to touch. That night, I called my mother. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Baby, do you want comfort or do you want a lawyer?" That is how I met Mara Voss. Mara's office was above a bakery downtown, which meant every legal conversation smelled faintly like butter and sugar. She was 61, wore red reading glasses, and had the calm brutality of a woman who had spent 30 years turning other people's mess into numbered exhibits. I told her everything. The marriage. The tests. Ethan refusing his workup. Margot's church comments. Sienna. The lost promotion. She did not gasp. She did not pity me. She took notes. When I finished, she tapped her pens against the yellow pad. "Defamation is hard," she said. I figured, hard is not impossible. She explained it the way good lawyers explain bad options. We would need specific false statements, witnesses, proof they were made to other people, proof I suffered measurable harm. The promotion helped. Salary difference. Title? Professional reputation. Those were not feelings. Those were numbers. The dangerous part, Mara said, is the truth defense. What does that mean? They may say what they said was true, that you were medically unable to have children. But I wasn't. Then we make them prove it. My stomach tightened. I already have my records. Your records prove one side of the equation. I knew what she meant before she said it. Ethan, for 7 years the conversation had stopped at me. My body, my failure, my supposed lack. No one had asked the other half of the marriage to produce a single fact. Mara leaned back. If they claim the statements were true, if they put your fertility at issue, then his relevant records become part of the question, not automatically, not publicly, but discoverable, potentially under seal. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had held pressure on a child's chest until a heartbeat came back. They were shaking. Mara noticed. You do not have to do this, she said. A public yacht costs something. So does staying quiet. She nodded once. That was the moment I knew she was my lawyer. We filed 2 months later. Avery Lane versus Margot Whitaker and Ethan Whitaker. Defamation. False light. Tortious interference with prospective employment. Legal language is strange because it turns pain into architecture. Paragraph 1. Plaintiff is a registered nurse. Paragraph 2. Defendant made false statements. Paragraph 3. Plaintiff suffered measurable harm. There were no sentences about sitting alone on bathroom floors holding negative pregnancy tests. No line for the humiliation of being prayed over by women who thought your body was a cautionary tale. No word for the feeling of your best friend wearing your old life like a borrowed dress. But the complaint did not need poetry. It needed weight. Mara found witnesses faster than I expected. Theo, who had heard board questions, a hospital administrator willing to testify that concerns about family controversy had been raised before the promotion vote. 2 women from church who admitted, under subpoena, that Margot had said I was not built for motherhood. A retired pastor's wife who remembered the exact sentence because, as she put it, it seemed unkind even at the time. When the lawsuit became public, the town did what towns do. It divided itself into people who wanted truth and people who wanted comfort. Margot called it a smear campaign. Ethan said he was disappointed in my bitterness. Sienna posted a photo of her baby's tiny hand wrapped around her finger with the caption, "Some blessings are worth protecting." I saw it during a lunch break and put my phone face down. Her daughter's name was Lily, 3 weeks old. Big dark eyes, a dimple in her left cheek, innocent in every possible way. That mattered to me. Whatever had happened around her, Lily had done nothing wrong. I would repeat that to myself many times before the story ended. The defendants answered the complaint in writing. Mara called me the day it arrived. Her voice had that careful edge lawyers get when they are trying not to sound pleased about someone else's stupidity. They took the truth defense, she said. Meaning they claimed the statements were not defamatory because they were substantially true. They wrote that my marriage ended because of my inability to conceive. They wrote that Margot's statements were, in their words, a fair and truthful reflection of known circumstances. Known circumstances. I laughed once. It sounded nothing like me. Mara said. They opened the door. How wide? Wide enough for me. The motion to compel was filed the next week. Mara asked the court to order Ethan to produce relevant fertility records, limited in scope and protected under seal, because the defendants themselves had made fertility the central factual issue. Ethan's lawyer fought it like a man trying to keep a match away from gasoline. Privacy, relevance, embarrassment, overreach. The words piled up. But the judge, a woman named Honorable Judith Klein, saw the contradiction. "You cannot claim a medical fact as truth," she said at the hearing, "then block inquiry into the medical basis of that claim." The order was narrow. The records would go to the attorneys only. Protected, redacted, used solely for the case. But the folder would open. After 7 years, the question would finally turn toward Ethan. The records arrived on a Wednesday. I was working triage when Mara texted, "Call me when you are off shift. Do not call from the hospital. 7 hours is a long time to hold a question in your chest." I finished my shift. I charted. I helped a new nurse reset a splint. I walked to my car with the whole evening pressing on my ribs. Then I called Mara from the driver's seat. She did not start with legal language. She started with my name. Avery. That was how I knew. I closed my eyes. "Tell me." 4 years into your marriage, Ethan had a fertility evaluation at Eastridge Men's Clinic. I remembered that day instantly. He had told me he was driving to Nashville to meet a vendor. He came home quiet and angry. He drank 3 fingers of bourbon before dinner. When I asked what was wrong, he said the traffic was terrible and snapped at me for leaving a dish in the sink. Mara continued. The diagnosis was severe, non-obstructive azoospermia. No measurable sperm in the samples provided. The physician recommended follow-up testing and counseling. Ethan declined follow-up. I sat very still. Outside my windshield, hospital staff crossed the lot in blue and gray scrubs, laughing about something normal. No measurable sperm. The words were clinical, clean, almost polite. They rearranged my entire past in one breath. Ethan had known. He had known for 3 years before the divorce. He had known while I kept scheduling appointments for myself. He had known while Margot talked about women made for charts. He had known when he let me sit in church pews under the weight of other people's pity. He had known when he wrote, "I want a family." I expected anger to come first. It did not. Grief came first. Not for the marriage, for the woman I had been inside it. The woman who kept apologizing to a man who had handed her his shame and watched her carry it. Mara let the silence stretch. Then she said, "There is more." I opened my eyes. What more could there be? The timeline creates a serious question about Lily. Sienna's baby. Ethan's supposed miracle daughter. The one Margot had called a real family. Mara chose her words carefully. Based on the diagnosis, Ethan fathering a child naturally would be highly unlikely without treatment. We have no record of treatment. That does not prove paternity one way or another, but it raises an issue. I thought of Sienna's Instagram post. Some blessings are worth protecting. I thought of the way she had texted me 2 days after the complaint was filed. "Avery, please stop. You do not know who this will hurt." At the time, I thought she meant Ethan. Now I understood. She meant herself. Maybe Lily. Maybe someone else. I did not ask Mara what to do. She told me anyway. "We do not investigate the child. We do not touch medical records that are not ours. If paternity is relevant in another proceeding, the court will handle it. We stay clean. Stay clean. That mattered. I wanted the truth. I did not want blood on an innocent child. So I stayed clean. But the truth did not stay still. Truth rarely does once the first door opens. The man in the maternity hallway, Owen Whitaker, was not a stranger to me. Not exactly. He was Ethan's younger half-brother, though the family did not use the half unless they wanted to diminish him. Owen's mother had been Richard Whitaker's second wife, a woman Margot never forgave for existing, even though Margot's own marriage to Richard had already been over when Owen was born. After Richard died, Margot folded Ethan into the family business and left Owen on the edge of it. A small salary, a warehouse position, a Christmas card signed by the office manager. Owen was quiet, broad-shouldered, and the kind of man who looked uncomfortable in rooms where people performed wealth. I had always liked him. Not in a dramatic way. He had simply been kind to me in a family where kindness was rationed. At holidays, he helped my mother carry dishes. When Margot made little comments about my work hours, Owen changed the subject. When Ethan forgot my birthday one year and bought flowers from a gas station at 6 in the evening, Owen had already left a book on our porch that morning because he remembered I liked old medical memoirs. After the divorce, I did not see him. I heard he left Whitaker Home Supply and started working construction 2 counties over. I did not know until later that during the messy months after my separation, Sienna had been seeing him too. Not seriously, she would say later. Not officially. Just lonely nights, convenient comfort, private promises that meant different things to different people. Then she chose Ethan. Because Ethan came with the Whitaker name. Ethan came with Margot's approval. Ethan came with a ready-made story where Sienna got to be the woman who succeeded where I had failed. Owen got blocked. His calls went unanswered. When Sienna's pregnancy became public, he did the math. He asked questions. No one answered. He came to the hospital because a cousin finally told him the baby had been born and that she looked, in the cousin's exact words, a lot like Owen did in his baby pictures. That was the folder he carried the day Margot cornered me. A petition. A request for paternity testing. Filed the proper way. Served the proper way. He did not yell. He did not threaten. He simply walked through the door with paperwork, which I have learned is one of the most terrifying things you can carry into a family that survives on performance. Margot saw him first. The smugness left her face like air leaving a punctured lung. "Owen," she said. Not a greeting. A warning. He looked at me, then at her. "Avery?" I nodded. The maternity room door opened behind Margot. Sienna stepped out, wearing a pink robe and the dazed, fragile look of a woman 3 weeks postpartum. For half a second, I felt only sympathy. Then she saw the folder. Her hand went to the door frame. "Owen," she whispered. The nurses at the desk pretended to work. Margot turned toward Sienna, then back to Owen. "This is not the time." Owen's voice was steady. "You made sure there was never going to be a time." Then he held out the folder. "I filed through the court. I am not here to fight. I am here to ask for the truth." The word truth moved down that hallway like a draft. Margot looked at me as if I had arranged the whole thing. I had not. That was the beautiful part. For years, they had confused my silence with powerlessness. But lies do not fall only because someone pushes them. Sometimes they collapse because too many people have been standing on them. After that, the cases moved on separate tracks. Mine was about defamation. Owen's was about paternity. Myra kept them separate with the discipline of a surgeon. "We do not need to prove who Lily's father is," she told me. "We need to prove who they falsely blamed." But in small towns, separate legal tracks still run through the same station. People heard things, not details, not sealed records, but enough. Owen filed for testing. Ethan objected. Sienna asked for time. Margot stopped posting baby photos. At church, the women who had once prayed over my empty womb suddenly found their hymnals fascinating whenever I walked past. The hospital board grew nervous. Theo pulled me aside after a transport review and said, "For what it is worth, some people are realizing they were wrong." I looked at him. "People realizing quietly does not repair loudly." He nodded. "Then make them repair it loudly." That is why we refused the first settlement offer. Ethan's lawyer proposed money, a private letter to the board, no admission of wrongdoing, sealed terms. Everyone goes home. Mara slid the offer across her desk and watched me read. It was a lot of money, enough to pay off my student loans, enough to replace my car, enough to make the practical part of my brain whisper, "Take it and rest." But the correction would have lived in a sealed file. The lie had never been sealed. The lie had walked through churches, grocery stores, boardrooms, hospital hallways. The truth deserved legs, too. No, I said. Mara smiled faintly. "I thought you might say that. I do not need revenge." "I know. I need the record corrected where the record was damaged." "That," she said, "is exactly how we say it to the judge." The hearing was scheduled for late October. Not a full trial yet. A motion hearing tied to summary judgment and evidentiary matters, which sounds boring unless your entire reputation is sitting inside the evidence. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood benches, fluorescent lights, a flag in the corner. The kind of room where people's lives change while everyone speaks in calm voices. Margot arrived in navy with pearls. Ethan sat beside her, pale and thinner than I remembered. Sienna sat 2 rows back, not next to him. That told me something. Owen came in last and sat near the aisle, hands folded, eyes forward. 2 hospital board members were there. Linda Pierce was one of them. So was Dr. Ansel, the board chair, who had told me 6 months earlier that leadership required an appearance of stability. I wore a charcoal suit and my grandmother's silver watch. My mother sat behind me. She did not touch my shoulder. She knew I did not need steadying. She was just there. That was enough. Mara began with the statements. Dates. Places. Witnesses. Margot at church saying I was not made for motherhood. Margot at the auxiliary luncheon saying Ethan had carried the disappointment with grace. Ethan telling 2 board-adjacent donors that I was emotionally complicated after fertility failure. The words sounded uglier in court than they had in memory. Maybe because lies hate being read slowly. Then Mara moved to harm. The promotion, the salary, the board concerns, Theo's notes, the email from Dr. Ansel asking whether my personal instability involving the Whitaker family should delay the appointment. Doctor, Ansel shifted in his seat. Good. Then Ethan's lawyer stood and tried to make it all sound like pain, not malice. A grieving marriage. A difficult truth. A family speaking from lived experience. Mara waited. Good lawyers let bad arguments finish. Then she stood again. Your Honor, she said, the defense has repeatedly claimed these statements were substantially true. They placed biological infertility at the center of their defense. The court ordered narrow production of relevant medical records. Those records establish that the factual premise of their defense is false. The room went very still. Mara did not look at me. I was grateful for that. She read only what the court allowed. No spectacle, no unnecessary humiliation. Just the necessary line. For 4 years into the marriage, Mr. Ethan Whitaker was evaluated at East Ridge Men's Clinic and diagnosed with severe non-obstructive azoospermia. No measurable sperm was identified. Follow-up was recommended. Mr. Whitaker declined. Someone behind me inhaled sharply. Margot made a sound. Small. Animal. Ethan stared at the table. Mara continued. Plaintiff Avery Lane's own fertility workup, produced voluntarily, showed no comparable impediment. The defendants nevertheless spread statements attributing the couple's childlessness to Ms. Lane, and those statements directly affected her professional advancement. Ethan's lawyer objected to something. I do not remember what. The judge overruled it. Margot stood. That is what I remember clearly. The scrape of her chair, the sudden turn of every head. This is disgusting, she said. The judge warned her to sit. Margot did not. Her face had gone blotchy, pearls trembling at her throat. She embarrassed my son. She could not give him peace. She could not give him children. Some women are not made for it. There it was. The line. The old weapon. Only this time, she had brought it into a room where words cost something. Mara turned slightly toward me. She did not nod. She did not need to. I stood slowly. My knees did not shake. My voice did not rise. Margot, I said, you are right about one thing. The courtroom fell silent. One person in that marriage was never medically able to have children. I looked at Ethan, then back at her, but the file never had my name on it. If a room can break without making a sound, that one did. Margot sat down like her bones had been cut. Ethan covered his face with one hand. Sienna began crying quietly in the second row, but not the kind of crying that asks for comfort. The kind that knows comfort is no longer available. Owen did not move. He only closed his eyes. The judge called a recess. No one rushed out at first. People needed a second to learn how to stand inside the new truth. Linda Pierce gathered her purse and would not look at me. Dr. Ansel did. For the first time, he looked at me like a person, not a concern. My mother stood behind me and said, "You done?" I nodded. "Good," she said. "Let's get coffee." That was my mother. Other women might have cried. Mine wanted caffeine and revenge pastry. We did not get far. In the courthouse hallway, Sienna called my name. "Avery." I stopped. My mother stiffened beside me. Sienna looked smaller than I had ever seen her. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Hands twisted together like she was wringing water from herself. I am sorry, she said. I waited. She looked at Owen, who had come out behind her. Then, down at the floor. I was scared. Ethan said he would take care of us. Margot said Lily needed a name. I thought if I told the truth, everyone would hate me. I could have said many things that everyone already did, that she had let everyone hate me instead. That fear does not excuse betrayal when you choose who bleeds for it. But Lily was 3 weeks old, and Owen was standing 10 feet away with a face full of questions that belonged to him, not me. So I said only what was mine to say. You were my best friend. She flinched. That is the part I do not forgive today. Today? Not never. Not yet. Just today. Sometimes boundaries do not need to predict the future. They only need to protect the present. Owen stepped forward. Sienna, he said quietly. We need to talk with the lawyers. She nodded. I walked away. My mother handed me coffee 20 minutes later in a diner across from the courthouse. It was terrible. Burned and watery. I drank every drop. The legal ending was less dramatic than the hearing, which is how legal endings usually are. The defendants settled after the judge's ruling made their position impossible. This time, the terms were not a whisper. There was compensation for the lost promotion and damage to my professional reputation. There was a written retraction sent to Mercy Grove's board, department leadership, and the hospital auxiliary. Margot signed a statement acknowledging that her claims about my fertility and my role in the divorce were false. Ethan signed one too. I did not frame them. I did not need to look at them every day. Mara kept copies. The hospital board reopened the director position. Dr. Ansel asked to meet. He sat across from me in a conference room with a glass wall and began with the phrase, "We regret that unverified personal matters influenced prior concerns." That is hospital language for we were wrong, but legal told us to be careful. I let him finish. Then I said, I want the position evaluated on the work. He looked relieved. It was 3 weeks later, I became director of pediatric emergency transport at Mercy Grove Medical Center. The first morning, Theo put a nameplate on my desk. Avery Lane, RN Director, Pediatric Emergency Transport. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Not because I needed a title to know who I was. Because someone had tried to take the thing I built and make it smaller than a rumor. And now the name was back where it belonged. Margot resigned from the hospital auxiliary within a month. Officially, she wanted to spend more time with family. Unofficially, the auxiliary women discovered a sudden passion for accountability. Ethan left Mill Creek before Christmas. He sold his share of the hardware stores to a cousin and moved to Florida, which felt appropriate because Florida is where men go when they want humidity to do what shame cannot. I heard he was working in commercial flooring. I wish him no harm. That is not forgiveness. That is distance. Margot sent me one letter. Handwritten. Short. Avery. I believed my son because I wanted to. That does not excuse what I did. I am sorry for the harm I caused you. Margot Whitaker. I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer. Some apologies are real and still arrive too late to require anything from you. Sienna and Owen handled Lily's paternity through family court. The test confirmed what the records had already made likely. Owen was Lily's biological father. I will not tell that part like a scandal, because it is not mine, and because a child should not have her origin story told as punishment for adults. What I know is that Owen asked for shared legal rights and financial responsibility. Not revenge. Responsibility? That told me more about him than any speech could. Sienna moved out of Ethan's house. She sent me one message in February. I know I do not deserve a response. I just want you to know I told Lily the truth from the beginning, in the age-appropriate way. I am trying to become someone who does not hide behind other people. I did not answer, but I did not delete it. That was enough for then. People ask if the truth healed me. That is the wrong question. Truth is not medicine. It does not erase what happened. It does not give back the years you spent believing the room might finally correct itself if you stayed calm enough. Truth is more like setting a bone. There is pain. There is pressure. There is the awful moment when everything has to be moved back into alignment. Then healing can begin. Not before. For a long time, I thought being calm meant enduring. I thought strength was letting lies pass over me without reacting. I thought dignity meant giving people no proof that they had hurt me. Now I know better. Sometimes calm is not silence. Sometimes calm is walking into a room with exhibits numbered and witnesses sworn and saying, "No, that wound is not mine." The first baby transport I led as director came on a rainy April morning. Premature labor at a rural clinic 40 miles north. Tiny girl, 3 pounds, 2 ounces. Fighter. Her father rode in the front seat of the ambulance, silent and terrified, while her mother stayed behind for emergency care. When we reached Mercy Grove and got the baby settled, the father asked me if she would be okay. I told him the truth. "She has work to do," I said, "but she is here, and we are here." He cried then. Big, helpless tears. I put a hand on his shoulder for exactly 1 second, then stepped back because comfort should never become possession. That baby survived. Her name was Lily, too. Different Lily. Same reminder. Life is not proof of anyone's worth. A child is not a trophy. A woman is not broken because a man needed somewhere to hide his shame. On the 1-year anniversary of the hallway, I walked past the maternity wing again. Same elevators. Same nursery window. Same lullaby chime when a baby was born. Margot was not there. Ethan was gone. Sienna was somewhere learning to live with the consequences of finally telling the truth. I stopped for a moment by the glass. A grandfather stood nearby holding a pink balloon and crying softly. No one paid attention to me. It was peaceful. I touched my grandmother's watch. Then I walked back to the emergency department. There were patients waiting. There always are. And this time, I was not walking back to hide. I was walking back to the life that had been mine all along. If there is one thing I want you to take from my story, it is this. Do not let someone else's shame become your identity. People will hand you lies in the language of concern. They will say everyone knows. They will say it is just how things are. They will say you are bitter when you ask for proof. Let them say it. Then ask the right question in the right room. Truth does not need to scream, but it does need a place where silence cannot protect the liar anymore. My name is Avery Lane. For years, they called me the woman who could not give a man a family. They were wrong. I was the woman who stopped carrying a lie that never belonged to me. And when the file finally opened, the only name missing from it was mine.